I really am not a people person. I've had more jobs than I can count on two hands at this point. And I have yet to find one that suits me. Someone in my position with no college education and no real-world skills really struggles to find and then keep a job. Every customer service job I've had has ended in a very ugly fashion. One time, a couple of years ago, I was even arrested and escorted off the property of the store that I worked at, because I may have accidentally threatened a customer. And my defense, he called me something he shouldn't have. And I may have said some things. That was a long time ago though, and now I'd like to tell you that I changed, but sadly, I'm still the same old me, closing in on 30 years old in a few months, and I decided I need to do something with my life. And that led me ultimately to the best decision I had ever made in a long time. And that's going back to school. I'm studying computer science online and I'm loving it. What I love most about it, though, is that my human contact is limited. What I realized quickly is that school is outrageously expensive, and I was just about out of money. As a result of my record and previous employment history, I was really struggling this time around to find a job. Finally, I found a pizza place near my house that was hiring a delivery driver. I figured since human interaction would be limited, what could go wrong? Clearly, quite a bit as it seems. The first few weeks were fine. I delivered a lot of pizzas and barely said two words. Any of the folks who ordered them, a huge amount of people actually requested for me to just leave the pizza at the doorstep, which was even more ideal. Then I met Deanna, oh sweet Deanna. Apparently, the people with the shop knew this woman, and she was a terror, I guess. She would always order the pizza with this weird special instructions that honestly made no sense. If anybody has ever worked in a service job, you know what I mean? When people ask for the stupidest things. My supervisor that night, who happened to be the owner's son, thought it would be funny to let me deliver the pizza to Deanna, considering my track record with fellow humans. I didn't know prior to delivering that I was headed for sweet Deanna's house, and pulled into the driveway. And this frantic middle-aged woman ran out of the house and a robe and curlers in her hair. I kid you not. She was waving her arms in the air and screaming at me saying, "Are you insane? Get out of my driveway. That's for owners of the house only, don't make me call the police." I could already feel my heart pumping. I want a calm voice, especially for me. I said to Deanna, "Ma'am, I just have the pizza. You sent me to drop it here, what?" The woman screamed at the top of her lungs and then shouted at me again, saying, "I won't ask you again. Move your car." Now, a few years ago, I would have probably thrown the pizza at the lady, but somehow I had the patience to get back into my car and move to the road. I got out and started my way up the driveway. I extended the pizza out trying to hand it to her, but she stared at me like I was holding a dead body or something. Annoyed, I said, "You're going to take a pizza?" Deanna stared at me. Her mouth was half open and her eyes looked enraged. In an instant, her eyes bulged open. And she said, "This is all wrong. This is wrong. How dare you?" I was beyond confused at this point. I basically was done with this and said whatever. I set the pizza down gently in the driveway and started walking back to my car. I'm a big guy. And this was a smaller woman. So I was shocked when the next thing I know, the woman jumped on my back and started to beat on the back of my head like some type of drum. While she was hitting me, she continued to yell, "It's all wrong. It's not even the right box." I couldn't even begin to understand what she was talking about. Was she mad that the pizza was in a different box? I finally was able to gently lift her off of me and set her down. I was annoyed and increasingly angry. But last thing I wanted to do was hurt this poor woman accidentally. I got to my car, and when I looked up, the woman was running on my car with a knife in her hand. And that was the final straw for me. I peeled off and looked in my rearview mirror to see her standing at the end of the driveway, waving the knife in the air like it was a flag or something. I didn't call the cops. And trust me, I know that that was stupid, considering this woman legitimately threatened me. but I was scared to get in trouble. I've had a lot of issues in the past, with the law 9 times out of 10 I'm the one to blame. I just fear that in case the system failed, I didn't want to jeopardize the only good thing I have going on in my life, and that's school and sort of this job. I didn't tell the guys at the shop exactly what happened. I just told them to never, ever make me deliver there again. The more time that passes, the more I'm thankful to be alive. I have no idea where she pulled the knife from. This woman was hanging on my back and I couldn't see her at one point. If she had decided to pull that out, then I may not be writing this today. Life is weird, my friends, and crazy stuff happens all the time, especially when you least expect it. When you really break it down, the thought of someone delivering you food is objectively an unnerving thing. Think about it for 1 second, a complete strangers preparing your food and other complete strangers driving to your location. And then you have an interaction with a stranger who is standing 1 foot away from you. What's even more unnerving is when this happens, and you didn't even order food. About 5 years ago, I was dog sitting for my old roommate. I didn't mind at all, since I figured I would just stay at his house. I lived there for 2 years. So I didn't feel strange or anything like that. And he had the dog when I used to live there. So I already had a great relationship with a pup. In my mind, this was going to be an easy endeavor. His dog was basically the easiest dog in the world to take care of. I swear that she was part cat or something. You could fill up her food bowl once, and she would eat it throughout the day. Most dogs I've seen just go nuts when their bowl gets filled. But not this pup. She never barked, and she went out twice a day and did her business. At that point in my life, I was also just really looking for some space and time alone, since I was nearing the end of a long-term relationship. I figured the space is just what I needed for a few days, to clear my head. His house was beautiful. He had a finished basement, with a cartoonishly large fireplace next to a massive TV. I figured I would post up down there for the few days that I was watching the house. My job was boring at the time and it could be done from my computer at home. So I set up my laptop, grabbed some snacks, and basically lived in the basement for a few days with the pub. On Friday night, I was feeling a little lonely since I have been there since Wednesday and I hadn't left the house yet or really seen anybody. I called a couple of buddies over to watch some college basketball and just hang out for the night. We ordered pizza and wings at around 7:30 p.m. and it was delicious. However, this is not where my unfortunate story takes place. My friends left at around midnight and I cleaned up a bit and then decided to get ready for bed. Once I lay on the couch, I ended up pulling up my laptop and starting some work just because I wasn't really tired yet. A little after 1 a.m., I thought I heard the doorbell through my headphones. I put my headphones down and sat still for a moment with my heart beginning to race. When nearly a minute went by, and I heard nothing, I felt much better. I figured that it must have been a noise or something in the music that I was listening to that sounded like a doorbell. But then I heard it again, clear as day, a doorbell number. Being in the basement, I had the slight advantage of seeing the driveway. The window sat just above my head. But if I stood on the tip of my toes, I could see the driveway. So to my surprise, more than my horror, there was a car running in the driveway with the headlights beaming. I couldn't tell what type of car was from where I was standing because of the bright headlights. My first thought was one of my friends that were there earlier had come back. I thought that maybe they forgot their phone or something, and that's why they showed up. I went upstairs and approached the door cautiously. I had all the lights off upstairs and only had the outdoor light above the front door on. As it got close to the door, I couldn't make out the details of the person on the doorstep. They seemed to have a hood on and then another brown jacket over the hood. When I got to the door, I cracked it open. Thankfully, there was another screen door in front of that door that was also locked. "Can I help you with something?" I said with some reluctance in my voice. The person grabbed the handle on the screen door and noticed it was locked and took a slight step back. At that moment, I didn't even look at that as alarming. It just happened so quickly that I figured it was an instinct to open the door on his part. He made a small grunting noise, I guess, and then said in a normal shy voice, I got your small pizza and wings." He then held up a brown paper bag that was rolled up at the top. I was still trying to make out the details of his face, but he kept his head down and a downward angle and a very annoyed voice. I said, "It's 1 o'clock in the morning. I didn't order a pizza." The guy looked around nervously and then back at me and said, Yeah, you did, the city address I have the order for." And then he continued to repeat the address back to me, which was in fact the address of the house that I was staying at. But I slammed the door in the guy's face and shouted, "Well, you guys got the wrong address. Good night." I made my way back to the basement. And I was incredibly annoyed at this point. Just as I sat down on the couch, the doorbell rang again, and went back to the window and saw that the guy's car was still there. Thankfully, the dog slept through all this doorbell nonsense, so I didn't have to deal with the barking dog. In addition to everything else going on, I called my friends and asked if they had played some joke and made since I was going to be home alone in the house. And all my friends that were over were already home and in bed. It's also worth noting, my friends are not the type of people to really pull jokes like that, especially one as elaborate of CES. Then I tried calling the pizza shop that we ordered from earlier. Maybe something weird happened in the system, and they accidentally put down my address for another order. But when I looked up the number online, they closed at 10 p.m. So wasn't that pizza shop? It'd only been around 2 minutes since I looked out the window, but the car was still there. And then the doorbell rang one last time. I contemplated going upstairs again. But I noticed the delivery guy was finally walking back to his car. The relief didn't last long though. He got into the car, turned it off, and then just sat in it. It didn't leave any appear to be on the phone. I was hoping that maybe he really was a pizza guy and they just had the wrong address. And he was talking to his boss or something. No, call me crazy. But I don't think I ever met a delivery guy that was this persistent. I tried to make up the license plate number, but the number was faded out a bit. I know it just started with JC, but that's all I could see. Finally, he backed out of the driveway and drove off. I was slightly concerned though, because he drove off very slowly and didn't turn on his lights. He just sort of rolled away in the car. I figured this uncomfortable ordeal was finally over and I was not in the mindset to work anymore. So I figured that I would finally try and just sleep. I turned off the TV and sat listening to some music in front of a low-lit fire. In between songs, I thought I heard a car engine. I got off the couch and looked out the window, and there was the same car again. This time parked in front of the house with no headlights. I snuck upstairs to the owner's bedroom to see if I could get a better look. I'm not sure if he noticed me, but then he drove off again. I hid behind the curtain and looked out the window for the next half hour, and the car kept driving by every few minutes. I was scared at this point because I knew something just wasn't right. I grabbed the dog and my laptop and locked the bedroom door upstairs. I was paranoid, but I felt safer doing this. Shortly after 2:30 a.m., the doorbell rang again. I looked out the window and saw no car this time. Then I heard a bunch of knocks at the door. And then that same voice from earlier loudly said, "I had your pizza." "I have your delivery, sir. Your food's getting cold." I sat quietly and didn't do or say anything. I should have called the police right there and then, or at least told the guy that it was calling the cops. But it wasn't my house, and I had never called the police before. So I was just not thinking straight. Then the NOC stop. I didn't hear the voice anymore. And I didn't see the car. It was as quiet as could be. And I sat and stared at the ceiling all night until the sun came up. I fed the dog and let her out in the backyard quickly and looked around for a few minutes that we were outside and then ran back into the house. I made sure she was okay. And then I decided I was going to leave. He was going to be back later that night from his trip and I didn't want to stay in that house for another minute. When I left, I nearly tripped walking out the front door. A rolled-up paper bag was on the front steps. I opened it, and it just had an empty container that put wings and sitting at the bottom of the bag. I felt sick because the thoughts flooded into my head, thinking about everything that could have happened. I drove away, and as I got to the end of the street, I saw what I thought may have been the car from the previous night. It was a dark sedan with a license plate that started with JC. I called the owner of the house right away, and he didn't seem to concern at all. So we just kind of discussed it for a little while, and I left it at that. Nothing ever happened again regarding that incident. I asked my friend countless times if anyone had ever showed up to his house since that night, and he said never once has he ever experienced anything like that. I have no idea what happened. What kind of danger I was truly in was the most uncomfortable and frightening night of my life. I know it may be irrational, but I have yet to order pizza or any other kind of food since. A few years ago, I was able to open an awesome pizza shop with my brother. The business was great. And we worked well together. My brother and I cooked the pizza and wings, and our wives took the orders and operated the cash register. We would usually hire college kids to deliver the food for us. And we could focus on the pizza and running the shop. We had a lot of turnover with the delivery drivers because it's not a glamorous job. Where I live, we get a lot of snow, and nobody wants to drive and deliver pizzas in the snow. On top of the tips, I paid my drivers well, more than any other pizza place we pay a driver. The only condition was please tell me when you're going to quit so I can make arrangements. This worked for a while and honestly still works today. The only thing I was not prepared for though, was my driver calling in for a shift. It was a Saturday night and it was busy. Of course. My brother was out of work for a month for some minor surgery that he had had. So I was insanely busy. My driver called in and said that he was sick, which I can't really question. I was able to get a friend to come in and help me, but he didn't have a license. So I had to deliver the pizzas while he cooked. And my wife answered the phones. Everything seemed to be going smoothly, stressful, of course, but smooth. I was making my last round of deliveries for the evening, when I pulled up to a house that was having a loud party. I walked up to the door with 3 pizzas, and 2 young ladies answered the door. It was clear that they were college girls, and they definitely had a little too much to drink. But it's a college town. And I'm not one to judge, and gave them the pizzas. And as she was trying to pull money out to tip me, I saw my delivery driver that called in standing in the room behind the girl. Without thinking I shouted, "David, what are you doing?" He turned around and saw me, and then just ran as if I was going to chase him or something. Now I was angry. But I wasn't so mad that I was going to chase the poor kid. The 2 girls looked confused. And I made a joke and told the girls that if they see David, give them a nice kick for me. I was mad at the situation. But I understand. As I said, it's a college town, and I know these kids just want to hang out and have a good time. I probably would have busted his chops about it. But no, I wouldn't have been that mad. I'm just not that kind of boss. And that night, I told my wife about seeing David, and she just had the same reaction as me. She called him some ridiculous name I can't remember, and we kind of just shared a laugh about the situation. We had a couple of drinks to cap off the night, and then got into bed at around 1 a.m. I hadn't fallen completely asleep yet, when I thought I heard a noise from outside the window. We live in a 1-story ranch house, so you could be standing right outside my bedroom window. It sounded like something bumping and tapping the window. I woke up to my wife and asked if she heard it as well. And she did. After a brief deliberation, she told me to move to the curtain and see if someone was there. My logical brain told me that there wasn't, but something did feel wrong. I went back the curtain, and to my relief, there was nothing there. I thought I can make out the smudge have some sort of fingerprints on the glass, but I was sure that it was my mind playing tricks on me. We both rolled over to go back to sleep, but I wanted to drink of water before bed. I made my way to the kitchen, and that's when I saw someone trying to break into the sliding glass door in my kitchen. I immediately jumped to the side in hopes that the darkness would shade me. My phone was next to the bed, so I couldn't call the police. And I was too scared to move. You can even imagine how scary it is to see a figure actively trying to open your door in the middle of the night. I have chills now just writing this and reliving that memory. I finally worked up the courage to run back into the bedroom and I called the police right away. My wife jumped right up and I told her to hide in the closet. I grabbed my left-hand driver from the golf bag and slowly made my way down the hall again. The figure was now trying to open the window above the sink and he was succeeding. The window was small, but it was bulging, unlike all the other windows and doors. Once he got the windows open almost all the way, it looked up and we made eye contact for the first time. It was my delivery driver. David A. gasped his name and stared in disbelief as the kid stared at me from the window above my sink. He turned white as a ghost and instead of continuing to try and climb through the window, he just jumped back and ran away. I stupidly tried to call him, but his phone was going right to voicemail. The cops showed up several minutes later, and I decided on something that most people probably would not have. I did not give the cops David's name. I told them my song and true to breaking in. And he ran when he saw me and gave a statement and they laughed and never saw David again. He never showed up at the shop, and he never showed back up at my house. Maybe once he realized the cops weren't coming after him, he figured I didn't report him. Or maybe he had too much to drink that night and he wasn't thinking straight. Either way, kids make mistakes. And I just hope wherever David is today, he's doing all right. At the time, I didn't have any children yet, because if I did, that ending may have played out a little differently. I have no idea what David intended on doing that night, whether he just wanted to rob my house or actually cause us harm. I'm thankful that he found some sense in that moment and actually ran away. I know we caught him out that night with his friends, and he was just kind of faded, I guess from drinking, but I really held no ill will towards him. So the fact that he ended up my house and tried to break in, I don't know whether it was coincidence, or he truly had some sort of ill intent. But David, if you're still out there, I sincerely hope that you're okay. The story took place about 6 to 7 years ago, when I was dating my college girlfriend. We were staying at her parents' house while they were out of town for a business conference in Phoenix. She had a lot of pets that needed to be taken care of, a bunch of fish and a few guinea pigs and a rabbit, and never realized how much work some of them were cutting up lettuce, cleaning cages, and whatever else went into the maintenance. Anyway, the night started out like any other. We were just watching TV. Actually, I think we were watching the Disney movie Heavyweights. If any of you are familiar with that movie, there is a scene where the entire camp absolutely pigs out in junk food. Once I saw the pizza, I knew that's what I wanted for dinner. Not good pizza though. I was in the mood for Papa John's. I love their plain breadsticks and all the different sauces that come with them, and for some reason, that's what I was in the mood for. My girlfriend begrudgingly agreed but asked if we could pick it up instead of being delivered. After I took a look outside, I told her that we should just have it delivered as the weather was getting really nasty up. It was a mixture of sleet, snow, and rain. She agreed but asked if I would call in the order, and I didn't mind. I called and paid with a tip included so they could just leave it at the door. They said it would take around half an hour or 45 minutes to deliver, which seemed reasonable to me. But after an hour and a half, I was starting to get hungry. I knew the roads were wet and honestly felt kind of bad for ordering it, as her parents' house was probably a good 7-8 miles away from the pizza place. Just as I was beginning to give up on the fact that food would never arrive, I saw headlights pulling up the long driveway. But as the vehicle got closer to the house, the light stayed on with no movement. No one got in or out of the car. It was just parked there for a good 5 minutes. I opened up the door and waved them on, trying to acknowledge that this was the right place. Still no movement as the headlights glared right in my face. Then suddenly the headlights went off. But the car wasn't moving closer to the house, it was moving further away. The car was backing up down the driveway and heading towards the road. I was both confused and increasingly hangry. I called the shop and asked for the status of the delivery and if I should cancel due to the weather. They told me that the delivery driver should have been there as they left a while ago. My girlfriend also seemed overly concerned or anxious about the whole situation. I told her it wasn't a big deal. And if worse came to worse, well, you could just make a sandwich or something. Still, I could tell something was wrong and that her mood had suddenly shifted. I tried to brush it off and not cry. And as soon as we pressed play on the TV, we heard a huge bang at the door. It was like someone was pounding on it as hard as they could. We both jumped up, eyes darting toward the door. I told her to stay behind the couch and just let me go check. I told her that I'm sure that it was just the delivery guy and leaving the food at the door. And I was right. The food was sitting on the porch and I didn't see a sign of a person or vehicle, which I thought was peculiar. I brought the food inside and locked the door. Then put it on the counter so we could start eating. When I opened the breadstick box, there was a napkin inside that looked like it had been written on with red pen. It said, "I hope you enjoy XOXO." I showed my girlfriend and her face turned white. I asked her what was going on and why she was acting weird. She then said that one of her exes, Sean, you stopped, look at Papa John's, or maybe still dead. She didn't want to make a big deal of it as she was sure that it would be a non-issue, but she said that she thought the car that he pulled into the driveway earlier looked like his old car, at least the one that she remembered from when they were dating, but she said that he always used to leave her notes that had XOXO at the bottom. Even after they broke up, she said that he would leave them on her car. She said that when she decided to leave him, he didn't take it well and began contacting her non-stop, trying to get back together and mailing and leaving her letters. She said that after she changed her number and made her social media accounts private, she never heard from him again and never had any further issues. I really didn't know what to say. I wanted to say I'm sure this one was a big coincidence, but I didn't know if it was or wasn't. I told her that anybody that was here is now gone, as I didn't see a personal car outside. I told her that we should skip dinner and go to bed if she wanted. But she said she was fine and that we should eat. About 15 to 20 minutes after we got done eating, we heard another loud crash coming from outside. It sounded like glass or ice had been hurled against the sliding glass doors in the kitchen. Again, I told her to stay in the living room while I went to check it out. The motion sensor was activated in the backyard, but I didn't see anyone or anything. I didn't see anything that could have hit the glass. Nothing was broken that I could see. I asked if she wanted me to call the police, and she was reluctant. One of her parents would have to be notified, and she said she really didn't have any proof that someone was there. We decided to call it an early night and try to get some sleep. I knew that I wasn't going to be able to sleep much. My anxiety was definitely going to keep me up most of the night. Thankfully, the remainder of the night was uneventful. It was 3 a.m. and we hadn't heard or seen anything else. However, to this day, I swear that I heard scratching and whispering from 3 a.m. on to the morning. I felt like someone was outside the window. But every time I shifted the blinds to look, nothing was there. In the morning, I chalked it up to the animals making noise, maybe to make myself believe or feel better about the situation from the night before. To my knowledge, nothing else came from the incident, and my girlfriend at the time never had another weird occurrence. We broke up a few years later, but almost every single time I order pizza I think about that night, and I expect there to be a note in my pizza box. Most people out there have experienced some sort of heartbreak, and everybody deals with this crisis differently and in their own way. For me, it was a pizza and shamefully Tinder, both of which usually left me feeling like a truck hit me. After a few, let's call them Tinder dates, I decided that I was done with Tinder, at least for a while. Things get weird and almost scary. Sometimes. I decided that the best way to deal with this loneliness was to order an amazing loaded French fried pizza. I'll say this. If you've never experienced the glorious bounty of a loaded French fried pizza, you need to change that immediately. I ordered my pizza, and about 45 minutes later the doorbell rang. It was a beautiful woman delivering my pizza as well. I know anybody can deliver a food, but I personally have never seen a woman so gorgeous delivering pizza at that time. I made some stupid jokes when I answered the door, and she giggled. I figured it was now or never to make a move, strike while the iron is hot, I suppose. So I just asked if she wanted to hang out. And to my surprise, she said that when she was done with work after this delivery, that she'd love to chill. I was pumped, and perhaps more pumped than my pizza. She said she needed to go home and freshen up, and then she would head over at around 10 p.m. We exchanged numbers, and I decided that I probably should freshen up myself. 10 o'clock came and she never showed up. I waited a bit and then finally texted her and asked her where she was, and never received a text back until about 11:15. I was angry at this point. But as soon as she said she was coming over, I forgot how angry I was and agreed to still let her come. Before I knew it, it was midnight and she still wasn't there. I finally started listening to my brain for once, and I decided to text her and tell her not to come. She texted back and claimed that she was almost there and that she really wanted to hang out. I was upset and decided that it would probably be like all my other Tinder dates if I let her come over, so I stuck to my guns and told her that I wanted to pass out for tonight and that maybe we can hang out again in the future. She responded with a simple text that was just a laughing face emoji. A weird response, I thought, but I shrugged it off and decided to go to bed. I had no idea what time it was been, because at some point in the middle of the night, I was awoken by my doorbell. I consciously made my way to the door, and there was nobody there. Directly behind the front door is my living room, and in the living room is a back door that leads to my backyard. As I was staring at the front door, I thought a cop movement out of the corner of my eye. I turned around and I saw someone running by my back door. I snuck over to that door, and I thought I could hear giggles and whispers through the door. I couldn't make out any words, and I guess it could have been the wind, but it definitely sounded like voices. A few moments later, my worst fears came true. While I was sitting next to the back door, I looked up across the room at the front door, and at the door, or what I believed to be 5 people. Whoever was standing in front then started to ring the doorbell repeatedly. I yelled from the other side of the room. "What do you want?" They stopped with the doorbell, and then a deep, burly voice responded. "We want to hang out, though he want to hang out." I shouted back a threat that I was going to call the police, but I had no intention of calling them if the threat worked. And then I heard a bubbly female voice shouting, they would never get here on time. Now the panic started to take me over. I ran back to my room and grabbed my phone to call the police. The entire time I was in my room, they kept ringing my doorbell and banging on the door. I half expected them to break the door down at any point. About 5 minutes later, I could see the lights of the cop car shining through my window, and I ran back to the living room. The group of people was gone, and I let the cops inside so I could give a statement. I told them about the girl at the pizza shop and that I was sure that it was her, and most likely her friends. The cops didn't seem too interested, if I'm being honest. They asked if I had seen any cars either when the woman delivered my pizza or when I had the alleged intruders, and sadly, I didn't see the car at the time. They asked if I had any proof that it was this girl, and of course I didn't. I didn't even know the girl's name. She was listed as Pizza Girl on my phone. Unfortunately, you can't charge someone based on feeling. I tried texting her that night and she responded right away, indicating me that she was awake. And she claimed that I was insane. She could be right. And I was unfortunately just targeted by a group of freaks that night, and this poor girl was just caught in the crossfire, but I don't think so. Everything just seemed off from the beginning. She agreed to hang out with a stranger after delivering a pizza. Yes, more weird things have happened. But it does raise a red flag claiming she would be over a 10. And then she just kept postponing, saying that she was almost there. And the weird laughing text, and then the intruder saying things like, "Do I want to hang out?" It just seemed weird and oddly suspicious. Nothing has ever happened since that night. But I can tell you for sure that I don't sleep well anymore. And I have yet to order any pizza since that night. I still have her number on my phone. And maybe now that I've written the story, I'll text the pizza girl and see if she wants to hang out.